Welcome back to Grit and Grow with Megan and Sarah. Today's episode is imposter syndrome, the negative impact of the fake it till you make it mentality. So today we're going to talk about imposter syndrome. We're going to give you kind of like a definition, maybe a few stories on what we've been through, and some action steps and why different things about imposter syndrome that we have found over the years that has impacted us. So, Miss Sarah, what is imposter syndrome?
Oh goodness, imposter syndrome. We went and looked up the definition because I have all sorts of ways that it applies to my life. But I was like, how do I explain it to somebody else? So the definition is that annoying voice that says you don't belong or you're just faking it. And I love this quote by Brene Brown. It says the opposite of belonging is fitting in. And so the imposter syndrome to me is never feeling like you're good enough, never feeling like you know what your value is, never feeling like you belong somewhere, always feeling like you're in the way. Imposter syndrome is not accepting and acknowledging and owning your worth. And oh boy, howdy, does that describe me to a T.
I like to think of it as the little self-doubting gremlin that sits on your shoulder. Like there's a little gremlin on your shoulder saying to you, you're not good enough. You didn't do that right. You can't do this. You're just pretending. You're not able to do it. That's it. It's a little gremlin right here on your shoulder that likes to talk in your ear and convince you that you're just not going to make it. You're not going to succeed. You don't know what you need to know in order to succeed.
And for me, like this gremlin that we talk about that sits on its shoulders, like mine has been hand scripted, what to say. I can hear my sister's voice saying certain things. I can hear my husband's voice saying certain things. I can hear one of my kids' voice saying certain things, all coming from that gremlin. And so for me, it's almost like I'm not even making up these things. These are things that people have really said to me, over the years. Like in my last job, as I was being written up and demoted for all this ridiculous stuff, and they're reducing my pay by like $2, they're like, I just don't see how you're going to be successful given the things going on with your family. And so to have someone just like blatantly look at me and tell me that you can't be successful at this job dealing with what you're dealing with at home. And so we're going to reduce your pay and demote you and give you less responsibilities, which I knew didn't mean less responsibilities because there was no one else in my department. I'm still running my department all by myself. And so for me, it was like, right now, I still hear it. I still see her with her hands clasped in her lap over her little skirt, leaning forward and trying to be so compassionate, and yet putting me in this tiny little box of, you just can't be successful dealing with what you're dealing with. And I hear that now over and over again. I can't be successful and take care of what I'm taking care of. And that's bullcrap.
Well, that explains a little bit more of what we were talking about the other day in our coaching session, because that would be why you are in the place you're in right now emotionally, because you keep hearing that, and we need to break that because that's not true. You can be successful with anything you're dealing with in life as long as you do the right things and you don't let that affect you. And that's the biggest thing. This imposter syndrome is common. Almost every successful person has had imposter syndrome at some point in their life, and they might even go through it on a daily basis. They just have learned to quiet it enough that they can get through their lives. So imposter syndrome is not something that like only some people feel. Everyone feels it at some point in their life. Even some of the most successful people out there have felt it.
Well, and that's why this is so important for us to talk about, is because it helps me to remember the whole, I'm not special because I'm dealing with this. This is something that everybody deals with. And so if I can deal with it more openly and more publicly, then it encourages me to believe that maybe other people will too. And so I don't stay stuck or frozen in this mindset. Instead, I can be like, so when people feel like this, they do this. But I don't know what people do when they feel this because I don't see other people talking about the fact that they feel this.
Well, I think that comes down to, like people don't, especially in our world, in the coaching and the mentoring and the world that we're in, how many people want to admit that they've been through that? Like they want to tell you how to solve it and how to help you with it, but they don't want to tell you, look, I've been here. I've dealt with this. I've been through all of the symptoms. I've been through my head telling me I'm not good enough. I don't deserve this. I've been through that. I've been through that a few times in my life. And so
Right.
people don't want to admit that. They just want to tell you how to solve it. But the thing is that one way to help people understand is to make everyone see this is not specific to one person. This is something common, and this is something that we can overcome. Does it take some actions? Yes, it takes some actions. Does it take some mantras and some constantly, reminding yourself of things? Yes, it does. But it can be overcome. Will it come back? Every time you try something different, it's going to come back a little bit. And then you just have to, it's a matter of talking it down. And if you don't get rid of it, but the gremlin can be silenced, or the gremlin can be, you can put duct tape on the gremlin's mouth temporarily.
We've got to feed the positive gremlin. I
Yes.
think we've kind of dived into symptoms without even like realizing that we've done that, but we've also made a list of symptoms that we wanted to share here.
Yep.
And so if you want to just go back and forth, I'll start with the first one. So one of the first symptoms of being an imposter syndrome is anxiety. And that might be really hard for us as a society right now to pinpoint where or what our anxiety is coming from. That just seems to be a blanket term. Everybody has anxiety. But so if you're experiencing anxiety, then hey, you've got at least one of the symptoms of imposter syndrome.
And that leads into negative self-talk. So negative self-talk is just in your head, you're hearing the little gremlin on the side of your shoulder saying, you're not good enough. Oh, you haven't succeeded before. So why would you think you're going to succeed now? Or last time you tried this specific thing, you didn't make it. So why do you think it's going to be different? The negative self-talk can go on every single, and you can hear your voice, you can hear someone else's voice. I sometimes hear different family members that have said things to me. I'll hear their voices telling me I'm not good enough and I don't deserve this. I don't work hard enough and things like that. It's just it's definitely learning how to quiet that enough to get through the day.
Before I dive into the third one, I think I've got a good, just maybe a homework or an action step that you and I could both take is what if we went through and kind of wrote down, this person said this thing to me. This person said this thing to me. Because for me, I know the gremlin has these lines and I just talked about one of them, but I think that would really help me to realize that I am letting other people have space in my head. I've given them that space and I'm going to acknowledge they have it so then I can choose to cut it off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually one of the next ones is dwelling on the past. And that is something that I find myself doing. I dream about my past work. I try to convince myself in my head all the time that I should attempt to go back to my past work. So I am really dwelling on the past. I'm just replaying things over and over and over instead of looking at what potentially could be forward. Oh, that one's a hard one for me to talk about.
That also, previous to me inviting you into this podcast, I talked a little bit about forgiveness, and dwelling on the past is a way of not forgiving yourself or the other person. And so you keep bringing it up because you can't let it go because you haven't forgiven it. So dwelling on the past is a way of keeping that as part of your life, whether you want it there or not, you keep it. And so that's why the whole forgiveness thing is kind of important. So the next one is irrational fears of the future. How many of us have gone through that? I can label one. I can tell you one right off the bat. So you know that 2 years ago I got hit by a car, right? So we know this.
Mm-hmm.
My husband said, and I laugh about it now, but this was a fear of mine and it paralyzed me for a little while, was soon as I got over the whole initial shock of having my foot run over and crawling across the grass, one of my first things I screamed out was, I am going to lose everything. So
Yep.
that's an irrational fear, but that was the first
Yep.
response I had, was this irrational fear, like I'm only holding on to this by this thinnest thread and this is going to derail me.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that. Yep. You could not get out of that belief. You were in that belief.
Yeah, it took me a while. It
All right.
really derailed me, and it's a completely irrational because my business is still going and it still went the whole time I was out.
Yes, it
So
did. I remember. Not only is your business still going, but your business is in the steps of expanding again. So, like,
yes.
all right. So the next one is feeling unworthy of attention or affection. Oh, that's a heavy one.
That is heavy. That is a
Yeah,
very
that's a
heavy
heavy one.
one. I know that you probably have a
I'm
few
not going to go
stories.
deep into it because we're going to keep ourselves on track.
Oh yeah. Okay. Okay, holding back. The next one is holding back from reaching your goals. So you set your goals and then you hold yourself back from reaching them. It's almost like you are you're what do they call that? When someone purposely tries, not purposely but subconsciously, purposely keeps themselves from doing something that they want to do, and I cannot remember the wording for that. Self-defeating prophecy.
Self-sabotage. There you go.
You self-defeat.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
You've already said you're not going to succeed. Thank you. You already said you're not going to succeed. So now you're going to set this
Excellent.
goal, and now you're purposely going to not reach that goal.
Yep, yep. You said you can't, therefore you can't.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so the last one we've got is overthinking and worrying about mistakes. Oh boy, does that one keep me stuck? Does that one keep me right where I'm at too? That's crazy. I would say I literally have every one of these symptoms right now, currently on this day, August 3rd. I have every one of those symptoms. Don't know why I'm proud of that.
But the thing is that we all go through them, and it's just a matter of how you can cycle through them, and if you can get past them. The thing is, we all go through them. It's a matter of, are you stuck or are you moving forward?
Right. And I feel like I'm stuck, but at the same time, I know I'm moving forward because here we are recording podcast. I think this is your third or fourth. It's my second. And I know we have more in the pipeline. We're excited to share. We're excited to talk about things. And so it's funny that I've convinced myself that I'm not moving forward when in fact I am.
And that comes down to you and I kind of make each other when the other one wants to be stuck, doesn't want to be, but wants to be stuck. We kind of make each other move forward. We make each other take we're like, no, we're doing this podcast today. No excuse. We're doing this today because because we want to move forward, but we're also very good at all of the other parts to it. We're very good at letting our the all of these little things get in our way so that we don't do it.
Well, and also I think one thing that you and I are both very, quote unquote guilty of is we prioritize our family's wellness, our family's health, our family's education. We really do prioritize those things. And finding a way to not allow that to stop us from doing other things in our life is, I think, really where we're at right now. It's like no one would ever doubt what our number one priority is when they know how we spend our time. But at the same time, can we maintain that number one priority and excel in our business to the level that we both talk about? Because one of the things I'm really aware of is the more I allow myself to self-sabotage, the more I stay in imposter syndrome, the fewer people that I am helping. As soon as I get out of my own garbage and use the skills that I have, use the education that I've gained, um, the sooner I spend less time feeling these negative things, because then I've moved into what our next podcast is going to be about, which is all those amazing positive feelings we have when we're in action.
Right. But that also goes into the next part we wanted to talk about was this imposter syndrome imposing on other parts of our lives. So like having these fears, having this negative self-talk, this does not just stay here in business. It does not just stay in one aspect of your life.
Nope.
So if you're feeling in business like you're the imposter, you're having all this negative, you have a little gremlin on your shoulder, it actually can go into your rest of your life. Not real life, but it's the rest of your life. And the opposite is
Yep.
also true. So as a mom, there are times, and I have had family members say things to me about me not being a great mom, me being late, all this stuff. And I'm like, I can literally fight it in my head, but then something will come up and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's because I'm a really bad mom, or that's because I'm lazy, or that's because I'm just not a very good mom. And it's something that came up over here on this side of my life, but this side is now being dragged into it.
Yep.
Like, you're not succeeding here, but that's because you're a bad mom. How are those two together? But it happens.
Yep. Yep. It's because we're carrying around that belief with us that I'm not good at, and therefore that shows up every time we try to take those steps. It's like right now where we've talked about we really want to be reaching out to people and letting them know that we're taking on clients. We are going to, offer this amazing package at 50% off, because right now we are really looking into, like, what do they call it? Boots on the ground. We want to help people. We want to help people who are stuck. And we understand sometimes when you're stuck, you don't have a whole lot of resources. And that's why for us, that's where we want to start helping people at, is that level of completely frozen. And we can't do that unless we're getting our content out and we're reaching out to people. And I know this, and yet here we are, August 3rd. We've been talking about launching this now for about 2 weeks, and I haven't reached out and invited not one of my friends on my friends list. I am completely frozen with this belief that I cannot add more onto my plate and continue to keep my head above water. We had to go to Portland just this last week and spend a couple hours at Dornbecker's. And next week, my little girl has her surgery, which is going to have us down and recovering for a solid 2 weeks. I found out at the appointment, though, I get to do the follow-up at Dornbecker's virtually. So we don't have to drive back to Portland. That's a 5-hour round trip for us. So it's a long trip. And so, like, starting to put all the pieces in place and rebuild the belief that I can do this is really exciting, and it feels really good.
Well, and the way I see it is, I agree
Oh,
with
look
you.
at that.
What?
I
What?
just I just looked at our action steps because we were good girls and we typed out what we're going to talk about.
Yep.
Read our action steps.
Yep. I know.
A.
We've been talking about it kind of a little bit here and there as we go. Acknowledge the feelings. Number one.
Well,
Acknowledge
I'm
them.
like, and I just love that because, yeah, Megan typed these out. Acknowledge your feelings. Megan typed these out, and I feel like, oh look, I just did that. And sometimes, like, again, this is why we want to do this podcast, because we can write out the steps, but it's in the doing of them. It's like, I just acknowledged my feelings. I'm challenging my inner critic. I'm going to focus on my accomplishments. I'm going to seek support. Go for it, Megan.
I am going to seeking support is kind of really important because I know you and I support each other. I'm going to show myself self-compassion. This is the one I find the hardest. And that's why you left it for me to do, because I am very bad with self-compassion. I tend to hold I have my standards here, and I'm like, if you don't reach that, you're just not good enough. So self-compassion is not something I'm good at. I am working on it all the time. because I know I can be better and I know that I am good at what I do. It's just even being a mom, being a housewife, being a massage therapist, being a coach, I know my stuff and I'm good, but I am really bad at showing myself how good I am. So that's one. And then realistic goals. That's really important because if you set a goal, I used to tell my students when I taught, if they set their goal here, way up in the clouds, it'll take so long to reach it that they'll give up. So you set little goals along the way to celebrate because that's really important. Learn from setbacks. Setbacks are not failure. Setbacks are a way for you to learn, change the way you're thinking, change something in how you're doing something and move forward. It's a learning, everything is a learning process. Lots of laughs, fake it till you make it. That's not necessarily the best thing, but and I agree with that. Like we said, the whole fake it till you make it mentality it can be very, very hurtful in some ways. Now, there are sometimes it can work a little bit, like, you're not really sure of something, but you got to learn something. So you're kind of like, you're learning as you go, and you're kind of pretending in your head that you already know it until you learn it, because you're going to learn it. You're going to get it. So you fake it a little bit, not huge,
I
but
like to
fake it a
think of
little
it as a tool. Yeah, I like to think of it as a tool instead of a lifestyle. And so that's a really important point that you brought out, that all of these are tools and definitely not lifestyles. Don't get into the lifestyle of acknowledging your feelings all the time. Don't get into the lifestyle of constantly challenging your inner critic. Like that's not what this is. Yeah, these are all tools to use, because there are times where we don't want you to set realistic goals. There are times that we want you to shoot for the stars. But when we get into this imposter syndrome and we get frozen, these are really great steps to get you back into action. And that is actually what our next podcast is going to be about.
well, the last one
I
is
want
focus on
music.
your strengths. Focus on your strengths. We all have things we're strong with. So you got to focus on but at the same time, you also want to start working on the things you feel weak at. Like, I know I'm weak at self-compassion. That's something I need to work at, because I know I need that help, because I'm very good at talking myself down. So you want to focus on your strengths, but you want to also kind of, make a list and work on those things that you need to work on.
Absolutely.
I always used to tell my sisters in my sorority when I was in college that it's a matter of confidence. When you're walking through things and you feel afraid and you feel all this stuff inside and you're worried, if you show confidence, if you make yourself feel that confidence, you will feel it inside, and at the same time, to a point. You don't want to hide your true feelings, but you want to show a certain amount of like confidence in certain situations, where until you get through it, because sometimes that's the only way you're going to get through it. And later deal with the situation.
Yeah.
When you're out of it and you're no longer afraid, you can deal with the situation. So, Miss
That's something
Sarah.
that I've really had to practice this year, is allowing myself times for my emotional response for things, because I don't necessarily want to have my emotional response when an action is needed from me. And that makes me think about, like taking care of my son and my kids this year. I'm able to take the action that's necessary to maintain their wellness. And then I go and take the time for myself to then have whether it's a mini breakdown or a posting on Facebook to get support to figure out how to handle this new diagnosis, or reaching out to you to be like, I feel like an evil mother. I was banging pots and pans together earlier.
Yeah, I mean, you sometimes you have to get through a situation, then you can go back and actually analyze the situation and figure out what, where your feelings are and how and deal with your feelings afterwards. That's kind of when I always have thought of fake it till you make it. That's kind of what I've thought about, not just faking the feelings, faking that necessarily in that moment what you're doing, because you probably don't, but you get through the situation, then you go back and you look at the situation and say,
Yeah.
now, how should I have handled that? Or how could I have handled that?
Right, right. Yeah. And honestly, that makes me think of like crisis situations too. When there is a crisis, look to women for leadership. But like we're the ones who are like, okay, this is what we're gonna do, and this is how we're gonna do it. We show up with confidence and leadership. And it's not until the doors are closed that you look at your friend, you're like, what are we doing right now?
Yes. Yes. Well, and that's, my husband laughs at me because I like to watch
Don't let the
TikTok.
kids know we don't got this.
Yeah, don't let anyone know we don't got this. Um, that's like I like to watch TikTok sometimes. And the other day I showed my husband a video of this woman so she was being carjacked and her baby was in the back seat. She jumped on the hood of the car. The guys tried to take off with her on the hood of the car. Finally, she's beating on the window. She's doing all this. He jumps out. She jumps off the hood and the car's still running. So now she's running after the car to get the car to stop. She gets the car to stop. She puts it in park. It's in the middle of the road and she just collapses. She's like, "Okay, I'm done. I got my dog, my child's safe, my car's, everything's safe. Now I can collapse because I had no idea what I was doing. I just
Yep.
did it."
Shut down time.
Yeah, shut down. Shut down. So, but that's kind of like, that's sometimes that's what you have to do. You have to
We
focus on
support the
one thing
shutdown.
and say, you know what, the shutdown will happen later.
Yep. All
Okay,
right.
well,
Well, I think we should wrap this one up here. We're coming up on 30 minutes. I think we've covered some really great ground.
I do too. And we will definitely, our next one is all about action and accountability. So we are going to do an action and accountability one, which you guys, we are going to talk all about that and how we can help you and everything. So join us again and we will be talking about action and accountability right here on Grit and Grow with Megan and Sarah.